New York City is the largest city by population in the United States, the center of the American financial industry, and a popular tourist destination for its cultural and historic sites. Broadway, Wall Street, the United Nations, Times Square, to name just a few. The New York City Police Department, or the NYPD, is charged with providing public safety and security in New York City. We're the largest state or local police department in the United States, with upwards of 36,000 uniformed officers. Since 1993, we have overseen an approximately 75% decrease in crime. And since September 11th, 2001, we have not had a successful terrorist attack in our 5 boroughs. Much of this success has been due to changes in police tactics and advancements in law enforcement analytics and operations research. Good morning. I'm Jessica Tisch, the NYPD's Chief Information Officer. Today, we're going to tell you about the strides we've made to inform crime fighting and counterterrorism decision-making with analytics and operations research. We share information and deliver tailored analytics to our officers through one major project, the Domain Awareness System, or the DAS as we call it, which I have been overseeing since its inception in 2008. We will be presenting 5 analytic techniques delivered through the DAS: real-time 911 response analytics, real-time sensor alerting, automated pattern recognition, predictive policing, and crime analysis, which we call CompStat 2.0. These analytic techniques both rely on and make meaning out of billions of inputs, which largely fall into 2 categories: real-time sensor data and geocoded records data. Real-time sensor data in DAS is generated by closed-circuit television cameras, mobile and fixed license plate readers, which take pictures of the identifying plates on passing cars, mobile and fixed radiation sensors, which detect radioactive materials, chemical sensors, which provide early warnings of chemical attacks, audio gunshot detectors, commonly known as shot spotter sensors, which triangulate gunfire locations, and a feed of information drawn from 911 calls. Geocoded records data, on the other hand, are essentially all of the department's historical crime reports. For example, arrests, warrants, complaints. These records give context to the sensor data. Now, to give you some sense of scale, in the DAS, we currently have 2 billion license plate reads, 100 million summonses, 54 million 911 calls, 15 million complaints, 12 million detective reports, 11 million arrest records, 2 million warrants, and 30 days of video from 9,000 cameras. Finding the right records to inform our decisions has truly become a big data challenge. Now, we've developed and deployed our analytic techniques over the course of the past 6 years. We started integrating analytics into the DAS in 2010 in the form of real-time sensor alerting on cameras and license plate readers. In 2011, we expanded our alerting capabilities to radiation sensors. In 2012, we deployed automated pattern recognition on our license plate readers. In 2013, we put out DAS's crime analysis tool. 2014 brought predictive policing, and in 2015, we deployed real-time 911 response analytics to the smartphones of every officer in New York City. Let me emphasize, every day we have more than 10,000 cops using the analytics in DAS to inform their decision-making. To illustrate this, I'm going to give you a snapshot of what's to come. Real-time sensor alerting in action in the 6-7 precinct, located in the Flatbush neighborhood of South Brooklyn. Everything you are about to see is real. Nothing was staged or scripted. Let me take you back to noon on Friday, February 19th, 2016, a sunny, unseasonably warm day in New York City.
Good a shot spotter. Take this all the way down to Winthrop. It seems like we're getting a male shot at the location too right now. So Church Avenue, Linden Boulevard.
Operations on the Central. Central, be advised we have a shot spotter activation, 479 East 94th Street, confines of the 6-7 precinct.
Straight? Keep going straight, keep going straight, keep going straight. You got any shots fired, Church Avenue, Linden Boulevard, the next intersection, so let's go to the spot.
Shots fired, job coming over at 10:50 o'clock. One more, each line, Dorito, each line.
Left.
Inside the house, 31-year-old male, second shot.
Now with shot spotted, it narrows it down to almost the exact location of where the shots are coming from, so it gives you a better direction of where to respond to.
Definitely helps at the scene having more information than just who he is and how he's involved. We can get pretty much everything and just kind of look into it a little bit more. The phone helped us out right away. Instead of going back to the precinct, finding everything else, going back to get the witness, we just do it on scene.
Let's review what you just saw. A surveillance camera captured a man running down the street, firing 4 shots at a target walking on the sidewalk. The intended target was hit in the foot, and an innocent bystander was hit in the hand. 4 of our audio gunshot sensors detected the shots and triangulated the position of the gunfire, triggering a near real-time alert in DAS that appeared on the smartphones of officers patrolling in the vicinity. The alert that the officers received included the number of shots fired, the exact location of the incident, and the direction of the shooter's travel. If you were listening carefully, you heard our central, as we call it, or our radio dispatchers, notify the officers of the 911 call while they were already en route. Our analytics told them about the shots fired faster than the traditional 911 system. That helps us drive down response times. Now, for the skeptics in the audience, the odds of our video team filming one shooting, the one shooting that occurred in New York that day, are low, but that's actually what happened. As I mentioned previously, shot spotter detectors are just one of the data sources in the DAS, and real-time sensor alerting is just one of the 5 analytical techniques we are going to tell you about today. All of the analytical techniques we employ are used by our officers to make high-pressure, consequential decisions like the ones you saw in the video. The DAS is changing the way policing is done in New York City, and analytics and operations research are driving this change. My colleague, Inspector Anthony Tasso, will now explain the first of the 5 analytical techniques we employ in DAS, real-time 911 response analytics.
I'm Inspector Anthony Tasso, the commanding officer of the NYPD Strategic Technology Division. I've been an NYPD officer for 22 years, starting my career on patrol in Coney Island, Brooklyn. I've been promoted up through 6 ranks, so I've had the privilege of seeing how the NYPD makes decisions from the tactical level as an officer on the street to the strategic level as the commanding officer of the 83rd Precinct in Bushwick, Brooklyn. At the tactical level, the NYPD's method of directing officers to 911 calls has changed little in the 50-plus years since police radios were deployed. That is, prior to DAS. Officers refer to 911 calls as jobs. In my career, I've responded to thousands of jobs, and while every job is different, the information a responding officer is given hardly varies at all. Typically, the officer is given the address and the type of call, and that's pretty much it. Imagine an officer responding to a 911 call for a domestic incident inside an apartment. The officer has never been to this apartment before and does not know what to expect when he or she arrives. What's behind that door? Is there someone who lives in the apartment with a history of violence or an active arrest warrant? Is this the first time the police have been called to this location, or is it the 10th time in the last 6 months? Is there a history of domestic violence at the address? Our officers were forced to manage each job, literally making life and death decisions without any of this historical context. The DAS's real-time 911 response analytics has changed all of that. Unfortunately for me, the NYPD does not do canned demonstrations. Our analytics must work, either in the streets of New York or in a conference room in Orlando, because the safety of the public and our officers depends on it. With the assistance of Lieutenant Michael Joy, I will demonstrate using real, live NYPD data how an officer would use these analytics to make better informed tactical decisions when responding to a job. Imagine Lieutenant Joy is driving the patrol car, and I'm in the passenger seat. In the 3.5 minutes it typically takes the NYPD to drive to a critical job, I'm going to review this information. Here on the screen is a list of jobs that have recently come into 911 in Brooklyn. You can see this job here just came in a few minutes ago. In the past, when this job was dispatched, the officer would hear over their radio only the address and type of call, which in this case is a dispute at 450 Clarkson Avenue. Now, with DAS's real-time 911 response analytics, I can get an overview of the location I'm responding to. I can immediately see that this location has 3 prior calls for emotionally disturbed persons and 2 prior domestic incidents. In addition, I can see the full text entered by the 911 operator. Often, this information gets delivered to the officer's phones in DAS even before the job is dispatched, especially when the radio is congested. This is driving down 911 response times to 5-year lows. Think about the officers responding to this job right now back in Brooklyn. Without the real-time 911 response analytics in DAS, they would have no idea what was behind that door. That's what it was like back when I was on patrol. Now, those life and death decisions that they make every day and are being made as we speak back on Clarkson Avenue in Brooklyn are much better informed because analytics has prepared them for what they're walking into. In our videos, you may notice that some of our officers refer to the phone instead of the DAS. That's because we've seamlessly integrated the DAS into the device. Many of the cops don't even realize they're using analytics. They just know that they trust the system to give them useful information. Let's return to the 6-7 precinct in Brooklyn to show you how DAS actually works on the street.
My name is Officer Candace Smith. My partner's name is Officer Nicholas Nelson. I've been working in the 6-7 for about 2.5, going on 3 years, but I have 8 years in the department.
When we first got on, our central can't get us information right away. We would have to call into our precinct, the person at the desk, or somebody give us the information from the computer. But now with these cell phones, everything comes up. We want to make sure that we know that there's active warrants. We want to make sure that we know there's complaints. We want to make sure that we know that there's domestic incidents. And while I'm doing my investigation, I already know half the information while my partner and I are going to the scene. So I have a clear indication of what am I getting myself into.
In the past, when you don't know exactly what's in that building, you're pretty much playing guess who. These department phones, they actually have the pictures of people who were involved in a shooting. So when you come into contact with that person, they know who we are, but now we have a step up because we know who you are. It has impacted my job immensely.
Good morning. I'm Evan Levine, the NYPD's Director of Analytics. So, how does real-time 911 response analytics transform data into insight to inform decision-making? At the NYPD, we receive approximately 25,000 911 calls per day. For every 911 call, the DAS automatically prepares an interactive report, constructed from the most relevant of the more than 2 billion records in the system. In the interactive report, we display any records with the same address as the 911 call, with record types indicating the potential for violence, such as arrest warrants and previous calls for shots fired, prioritized to the top. Officers can also view records that occurred in the vicinity of the job through geocoded radius searching, even if the addresses don't precisely match. The second analytical technique we will describe is called real-time sensor alerting. This is a diagram of our alerting process. The 3 steps are automated alarm, adjudication, and action. Automated alarms are triggered by algorithms that monitor each of our real-time sensor feeds. When an automated alarm occurs, an officer monitoring the system receives a message in the DAS with the raw data that triggered the alert, coupled with contextual information. He or she then makes a decision, called adjudication, as to what police action is necessary. Since we provide standard operating procedures in the DAS as to how to handle each type of alert, this process is an example of prescriptive analytics. In other words, the logic in the DAS interprets the raw data and suggests a course of action to the adjudicating officer. The police action itself is the third and final step in the process. Though real-time sensor alerting can help with general policing, as you saw with the ShotSpotter video, it is most important for our counterterrorism mission. The NYPD's Counterterrorism Bureau has a group of officers who use the alerting process 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Chief Waters, the Bureau's commanding officer, will tell you more.
I've been with the police department for 35 years. I'm Chief of Counterterrorism James Waters. The domain awareness system is a vital part of the NYPD counterterrorism's approach to preventing an attack in New York City. The domain awareness system uses algorithms to inform me to make decisions regarding counterterrorism issues every day. We did not have the domain awareness system pre-9/11. It's a game changer because we had a number of systems all working in standalone. The DAS brings everything together at your fingertips. So the environmental sensors, the chemical sensors, which would give us some indication right away of a chemical release. We have radiation sensors on the precincts, on station houses, they're on boats, they're in the helicopter. The radiation sensor equipment sends real-time data to the Lower Manhattan Security Coordination Center.
My name is William Chu. I've been at the NYPD for about 11 years, and the last 3 years is spent in the Counterterrorism Bureau. This is the video analytics portion that alerted us in the application in the domain awareness system that someone's left an unattended package. Now, the best form of intel is always eyes on. Now, in this case, we have eyes on through the video. With the system here in place, keeps the city far safer than it did before. It also gives officers not in the field a more intelligent way of looking at things. Prior to the system, we would not get an automated message. We would receive a 911 call. The 911 call would appear at dispatch. Dispatch would have to send out police officers to this location to gather the intel. We have intel at our desktop now because of the video analytics portion of this application.
We do about 3 million license plate reads a day. So when we're, say, looking for a vehicle, we can maybe go by a description of a vehicle, which could be, a van. And when we can take that van and narrow it down to maybe a specific location, read by a specific license plate reader, and then from that, get the data of who is using that vehicle.
If you were to ask me 10 years ago as the Chief of Counterterrorism if I would be using the phrase Operation Research in my daily vocabulary to make informed decisions, I would tell you were crazy. But in fact, it's true. There's no way we could be as effective as we are here in New York City without using the domain awareness system.
Each sensor feed has an independent set of rules and logic to trigger automated alerts in DAS. Our video analytics algorithms use background subtraction to detect suspicious packages near potential terrorist targets. In the video, you saw a brief example of these algorithms detecting an abandoned bag. Our radiation sensors use a threshold and logic-based rule set to allow us to quickly identify the use of a dirty bomb, potentially before detonation. These sensors will trigger an automated alarm in DAS if they measure radiation above background levels, or if they detect any signal from particularly dangerous isotopes, such as uranium or plutonium. Our chemical sensors use similarly structured analytics. Our license plate readers use optical character recognition to compare every plate they read, approximately 3 million per day, to an NYPD watch list that includes vehicles connected to active terrorism investigations. They send an automated alarm anytime there is a match. We apply a logic-based rule set to the 911 feed, filtering on the type of job and the location where the job occurs. For example, we trigger an automated alarm whenever there is a 911 call for shots fired near a potential terrorist target, so we can quickly identify Paris and Mumbai-style attacks. Our ShotSpotter detectors use acoustic correlation processing along with human-in-the-loop error checking to triangulate the locations of gunshots. Our analyses have shown that 75% of firearm discharges are not called into 911, so on many occasions, the alerts in DAS are our only signal that there has been a shooting. The third analytical technique I will discuss is called automated pattern recognition. We apply this algorithm to data from our license plate readers, or LPRs, to forecast the future locations of vehicles on our counterterrorism and criminal investigation watch lists. These predictions make interdicting these vehicles much easier, eliminating the need for officers to constantly monitor the vehicle, which is expensive in terms of staffing, or place a GPS device in the vehicle, which requires access to the vehicle. Our algorithms search for two types of patterns: time and place patterns and routing patterns. A time and place pattern occurs when a vehicle is observed passing the same fixed LPR at approximately the same time on the same day of the week. For example, a vehicle that crosses the Brooklyn Bridge into Manhattan every Monday morning at around 8:30 a.m. A routing pattern occurs when a vehicle passes a fixed LPR and then, sometime later, passes a second fixed LPR. For example, if a vehicle entered the city via the Brooklyn Bridge and then traveled northbound on the FDR Drive, it would pass 2 of our LPRs in about a 15-minute time span. We detect routing patterns by parsing the locations, times, and dates that a plate has been read. The example plate on this slide was first read crossing the Brooklyn Bridge inbound at 12:02 on March 4th. We can then populate a table where the first column denotes the first LPR passed and the second column the next LPR passed. As we parse the read history, additional routes are revealed. Eventually, the routes frequently traveled by a watch-listed vehicle become apparent, marked here with thicker arrows. If we wanted to interdict this vehicle, we would simply wait to observe it pass the FDR southbound LPR and trigger an alarm via our real-time sensor alerting. At that time, we would dispatch officers to the Brooklyn Bridge outbound and wait for the vehicle to pass. Every morning, our algorithm runs automatically and delivers a list of plates available for interdiction that day, using both time and place and routing patterns. I'll note that the NYPD was the first law enforcement agency to examine its LPR data in this way. We developed the time and place and routing pattern categorizations by discussing criminal behavior with NYPD detectives, then tuning our algorithms to detect those behaviors. The final 2 analytic techniques I will describe, predictive policing and crime analysis, inform strategic rather than tactical decision-making. Every day, each precinct's commanding officer must make a difficult strategic decision of where to place his or her officers on patrol. Should officers patrol at the location of the previous week's crimes? What if a notoriously violent location had a quiet week? What if violence erupted at a typically quiet intersection? These decisions are important because the placement of NYPD officers on patrol can have powerful crime-fighting and crime prevention effects. Let me take a moment to explain how strategic decisions have historically been made at the NYPD and police departments around the world. Starting with a cardboard map of a precinct, analysts would place pushpins at locations where crimes had occurred. The various pushpin colors would mark different types of crimes. Typically, a pushpin would be removed 4 weeks after the crime occurred, resulting in a running map of the last 28 days of crime. Analysts would circle clusters of pushpins, call them hotspots, and then cops would be assigned to patrol these hotspots. For many years, the NYPD's strategic resource allocation analytics could simply be summarized as putting the cops on the dots. Now, through the DAS, we inform these decisions using an analytic approach we call predictive policing. We have deployed predictive policing algorithms for 6 different types of crimes: shootings, burglaries, felony assaults, grand larcenies of motor vehicles, and robberies. Each algorithm uses historical data to make recommendations regarding where to deploy police resources over the next 7-day period. First, the algorithm divides the area of interest into a grid of boxes. Scores are then calculated for each box, and the 10 boxes with the highest scores are highlighted for deployment, as shown in this screenshot. The score for each box is calculated by summing individual scores associated with the records that occurred in that box. I'm going to dive deep into our shooting algorithm to demonstrate how this works. The shooting algorithm relies on historical shooting records, from which it pulls the locations, dates and times of occurrence, and some of the shooting's characteristics. These factors are entered into a nonlinear equation whose parameters are tuned via the machine learning technique of gradient descent. On this slide, I've written the equation for calculating the weight associated with a shooting record. Let's examine what's going on here. The weight assigned to each record is built from 3 terms multiplied together: a time discounting term, a seasonal variation term, and a record characteristic term. Each of these terms originated from conversations with our detectives. Essentially, we translated their subject matter expertise into mathematics. All of the variables named A with subscripts are parameters tuned using gradient descent. The variable D is the number of days in the past the shooting occurred. 1095 is just the number of days in a 3-year period. This is as far back as our algorithm searches. So the first term declines linearly with the age of the record. In other words, the further in the past that an event occurred, the less it influences our prediction, as shown in the left-hand graph. The seasonal term also depends only on the age of the record. It's a sinusoidal function with a period of 1 year. We included this term because our detectives told us that some locations are crime-prone only in particular seasons, like a park that has a history of shootings in the summertime. This term gives more weight to crimes that occurred in the same season in previous years, as shown in the right-hand graph. The third and final term takes into account what caused the shooting. The V terms are binary variables for domestic shootings, club-related shootings, and shootings where the motive was gang or revenge-related. Our detectives told us that all of these characteristics influenced their belief as to whether there would be another shooting in the same location. So we increase or decrease the weight of that shooting accordingly. Our data set was 4.5 years of shooting records that we split into 3 parts, as shown on this slide: historical, training, and cross-validation data. The algorithm always looks back 3 years, then predicts 1 week into the future. For example, for the April 1st, 2014 training run, the algorithm looks back to April of 2011. To train the model, we repeatedly ran it on the 52 weeks in the training data set using a slightly different combination of the A parameters from the previous slide. That's how gradient descent works. Our metric for success is the number of shootings in the training data that fell in a highlighted box, which we express as a percentage of the approximately 1,200 that occurred. Different combinations of A parameters give us different levels of success, sometimes better and sometimes worse. Gradient descent helps us find the best combination of those A parameters. Next, we cross-validated our model on 24 weeks additional data to confirm that it had not been overtuned to the training data. In fact, when the model was run on the training data and the cross-validation data, the percentage accuracies varied hardly at all. The chart on this slide shows the percentage accuracy of our predictive policing algorithms in yellow compared to the traditional crime analysis method of 28-day hotspots in blue. As is standard, these percentage accuracies are reported for the cross-validation data. Our analytics improve on the traditional method for every one of the 6 crime types. In most cases, we are about twice as accurate as the traditional method. However, when you look at shootings, we are more than 5 times more accurate. The final analytics component I will discuss is used for crime analysis. It's called CompStat 2.0. The weekly CompStat meeting is the beating heart of the NYPD. The purpose of these weekly meetings is for the department's executive staff to ensure the accountability of precinct commanders, improve performance, and share information. Between 1993, when Commissioner Bratton began CompStat, and 2013, CompStat evolved very little. The entire meeting was structured around this book. The pages in this book look like this: a static table of numbers with little data visualization applied. There are entries in here for major crime types, such as murder, rape, and robbery, and counts of these crimes are compared to the previous year. For anyone who hasn't spent years studying pages like this one, it's very difficult to pick out the most important trends, and the book isn't useful for picking out geographic clusters or potential patterns. CompStat 2.0 brings modern data visualization techniques to the CompStat book and to the NYPD's crime analysis. Through the DAS, we now present every number in the CompStat book in interactive form. If a user clicks on a number, the DAS brings up all of the records included in that number and marks them on the map. We have also constructed a data visualization engine to enable the user to explore trends and patterns in the statistics. How has this changed the beating heart of the NYPD, the CompStat meeting? The DAS is on every screen in the meeting room, informing resource allocation decisions with analytics. I'll defer to Captain Longobardi, the executive officer of the 6-7 precinct, to explain how it has changed his job.
You know, what's interesting is there's quite a few people that have come here at several ranks, me being one of them. You know, I've worked in a bunch of places, and this is actually my favorite precinct in the city. My name is Captain Anthony Longobardi of the 6-7 precinct. We used to have to use the old pin maps. Every day I would run the robberies, the burglaries, and the grand larcenies from the person that happened within the command, and I used to plot them. And it took some time, but now it's completely unnecessary. I mean, we just had CompStat yesterday. It's a necessary meeting amongst precinct commanders and support units. It enables us to work together to fulfill the mission of the police department. It's been a great tool in reducing crime. It's been a great tool in information sharing. 2016, we're off to another good start for the year. Overall, we're 1.5% down in index crime, and we finished down in robberies 10%, felony assaults 15%, burglaries 15%.
See a cluster down by the Vanderveers, if I'm not mistaken, Anthony?
A lot of them are domestic violence related.
If you go into CompStat 2.0, you can pull out each one of those 61s and read them. Using the data, you have a great idea of what's going on in a specific area, and we can use that for deployment purposes.
I prepared for my entire CompStat presentation was done strictly from the domain awareness system. It takes what used to take me hours and it shortens it into seconds, and then I can analyze the data very, very, very quickly. The domain awareness system has without a doubt made the city a safer city. Just by getting us that information faster, which enables us to respond quicker. I mean, it saves lives. There's no question about it. I love the domain awareness system.
I'll note that we recently released a version of the CompStat 2.0 data visualization tool for the general public. You can find it at compstat.nypdonline.org. We can separate the impacts of DAS into 4 categories. We have provided demonstrations of the DAS to hundreds of law enforcement and public safety agencies around the world. In 2015 alone, we gave 105 demonstrations to representatives from 27 different countries. Many of these agencies have adopted the DAS's analytics into their own practices. More directly, the NYPD has negotiated a unique revenue sharing agreement with Microsoft, our application developer, who integrates our analytics into the DAS software. The City of New York receives 30% of the revenue from any sales of DAS. The Washington, D.C. Metro Police, the Singapore Police Force, and the Brazilian National Police, pictured here, have purchased the DAS software and used it to secure high-profile sites and events, such as the 2014 World Cup and the upcoming 2016 Summer Olympics. These sales have already brought in over $1 million of additional revenue to New York. DAS's usage on mobile devices throughout 2015, shown here, demonstrates officers are adopting the system. We track logins and job clicks, meaning the number of times an officer explored a job's interactive report. At the end of 2015, we hit 100,000 job clicks per week. Over the last 2 years, desktop logins grew by a factor of 10, and searches grew by a factor of 100. Before DAS, the NYPD used 500 of its officers as crime analysts. By making these officers more efficient, we've been able to reassign some of them. Additionally, we have made the Detective Bureau's investigations more efficient, an improvement that affects 5,000 officers. To approximate the total savings, we use an estimate of $100,000 annual salary per officer, a 50% increase in efficiency for crime analysis, and a 5% increase in efficiency for investigations. These efficiency estimates were derived from a survey of NYPD officers detailing how they spent their time, as well as interviews and focus groups with DAS users. All told, we estimate savings from staffing to be approximately $50 million per year. Regarding public safety, officers have told us that using real-time 911 response analytics helps them respond faster than traditional dispatching. As a preliminary analysis, we compared the response times for critical jobs from the first 3 months of 2016 to the same period in 2015. This year's times are 9% faster. Commissioner Tisch will tell you more about the public safety impacts.
The DAS is one part of the NYPD's layered approach to crime fighting and counterterrorism. For this reason, and because socioeconomic conditions don't stay constant in New York, it's difficult to separate out the effects of the DAS, but we can still see evidence of real impacts. Economists have calculated the monetary damages due to terrorist attacks, ranging from greater than $100 billion for an attack the scale of September 11th to several billion dollars for an attack the scale of the 2005 London bus and subway bombings. We've certainly seen direct economic damages in recent attacks in Brussels and Paris, but more importantly, these attacks also leave a horrific loss of life, injuries, fear, and disorder. To make the broader point, by definition, every crime has a victim, and their costs are not just monetary. Compared to 2013, when DAS was just beginning to be pushed out on desktops across the NYPD, overall crime in New York City is down 6%. That's driven by approximately 2,400 fewer burglaries, 2,200 fewer robberies, and 1,700 fewer grand larcenies per year. Over those 2 years, that's 10,000 fewer victims who have had to bear those costs, and DAS is a big part of that. Consider Sergeant Joseph Klubnik of the 8-3 precinct in Bushwick, Brooklyn, who in June of 2015 used our predictive policing algorithm to identify where to place an anti-burglary team. The algorithm highlighted a region 3 square blocks in size, and after 2 hours of police presence in the area, the team arrested a pattern burglar, actively burglarizing a basement. Had he not been caught that day, he probably would have struck again. Think about Diomedes, Venezuela, who on December 1st, 2015, assaulted his wife, then abducted his own 3-year-old daughter in a minivan. Officers entered his vehicle's plate into a watch list, causing real-time sensor alerting to trigger an alarm when the vehicle crossed the George Washington Bridge. Pursuing officers apprehended the perpetrator, preventing any further harm from coming to the young girl. At the same time, the relationship between the police and the communities they serve has been the subject of an ongoing national conversation. We've seen community frustration with law enforcement come to the surface in Ferguson, in Baltimore, and other cities across the country. You may not realize it, but analytics is an important part of this conversation, and in our view, part of the solution. Commissioner Bratton has often compared the enforcement techniques of the previous decade to chemotherapy, a whole body treatment that doesn't spare the healthy parts as it attacks the problem. What we're doing now, using the analytics in DAS, is targeted therapy, the kind that focuses on the cancer and leaves everything else alone. We call it precision policing, and it is a significant part of the DAS's impacts. Remember Officer Candace Smith, who you saw earlier in the 6-7 precinct in Flatbush. Using the DAS's real-time 911 response analytics, when she responds to a job, she has detailed information about who she's looking for. She doesn't need to inconvenience the vast majority of people in the neighborhood who obey the law and are just going about their business. So, in the context of that larger conversation about police and community relations, precision policing and the DAS have helped us achieve what Commissioner Bratton calls the peace dividend. In 2015, arrests, criminal summonses, and street stops have decreased by more than 1 million from their 10-year highs, while at the same time, overall crime has fallen to a 50-year low. Using analytics, we can have a safer city and a fairer city too. Commissioner Bratton and the men and women of the NYPD will now tell you more about how the DAS is changing the department.
I'm Bill Bratton, Police Commissioner for the City of New York Police Department. Throughout my career, I've sought to apply the principles of analytics and operations research to public safety. One of my priorities was to bring the department into the 21st century, where data would inform tactical and strategic decision-making. We've accomplished this through our domain awareness system. DAS, as it's called, plays a key role in our day-to-day efforts to keep New York City safe. It helps us deal with the traditional areas of preventing crime and disorder, but it's also crucial to our 21st century mission, the challenges of terrorism.
The DAS is absolutely a significant crime-fighting tool for the NYPD. With the domain awareness system and DAS mobile, we now have all that data available at our fingertips.
Everybody on my team, we all use it, so it gives us a step up on the perpetrators. Before Central was able to put it over the air, we went to the location and were able to apprehend the suspect. I definitely think New York City's safer because of the DAS system.
I think the system has changed my approach to policing. DAS does allow us as police officers to make our job more efficient and respond to things quicker. Before receiving DAS, by the time we would have actually got the information, this perpetrator would have already been gone in the wind.
DAS has basically taken every single analytic tool that we have, put it in one location where everyone can use it. One of the most unbelievable things that I'm fortunate enough to have happened in my career.
The domain awareness system did help me positively ID someone that was on a wanted flyer and make an arrest on closing out a pattern.
It's taken us to a next level. We can find out exactly where the shots happened. It's helped us locate spent shell casings. It's got my thumbs up.
The feedback that I've received is absolutely positive. They love it. So we're constantly upgrading the application to make it better and more efficient for the officers.
Pushman maps are the 20th century of crime fighting. DAS is the 21st century of crime fighting.
My name is Detective Daniel Higgins.
My name is Officer Guglielmo.
Police Officer Rossignolo, 61st Precinct.
Mike Frigidis. My name is Christian Vijasis.
Police Officer William Chu.
My name is Joe Klubnik.
Christian Torres, Chief of Department's Office, CompStat Unit.
Over the past 35 years, I've been privileged to lead 6 different police departments, and I've worked with public safety agencies around the world. In my opinion, DAS represents a sea change in law enforcement, as it makes analytics operational. We've done it here in New York City first, and we're already sharing the approach with our law enforcement and public safety partners throughout the world. It's tomorrow's policing today.
Finally, on behalf of Commissioner Bratton and the men and women of the New York City Police Department, I would like to thank Informs for naming us a finalist for the Edelman Award. It is a privilege to share the stage with 5 other terrific projects. Thank you so much.